Right, I think we've got everyone, haven't we? Yeah, okay. Fab. Hi guys, it's nice to see you. My name's Dr. Meg Pryor. I am a GP working here in Rushcliffe, but I'm also a lifestyle medicine specialist. That's my area of specialty. So I've been doing some workshops for people on aspects of lifestyle that can help improve our health and our well-being. And today's is on relaxation and sleep. I've kind of plumbed them both together because I think there's a bit of overlap, or quite a lot of overlap there. Hands up, any of you who've been to one of my talks before? Quite a lot of you, recognise a lot of you. Hands up, any of you who have been to this one before, because we have run it before. Okay, that's good. Today we're going to run through a little bit on like the biology of stress, but I don't want any of you who didn't do so well at science to worry. I'm just going to give you a bit of a background so that you understand kind of how it works in the body physically. And we're going to talk a bit about the negative impacts of chronic stress. That means stress over a long period of time rather than short periods of stress, which are actually good. We're going to think about the causes and contributing factors for stress. And then we're going to have a little think about what we can do. So the second part is really going to be for you guys to have a think about what you can do and to sort of have a bit of a reflection about your levels of stress and where you think you sit and where you feel you could make some improvements. Because for each and every one of us, our own lives and our experience of stress will be really different. So the idea of today is really just to give you a little bit of a background, but then to prompt you to have a little think, look at your own lives and have a little think about where you think you could make some changes that might be helpful. Then we're going to do a little bit of a breath exercise. Have any of you done like breath work before? Just hands up if you're familiar with it. About half of the room, and then hands up again if you've never done breath work or don't even know what I mean when I say breath work, because that sounds like a weird, yeah, okay, great. So we'll talk you through a technique really where we're just going to sit quietly and we're just going to focus on our breaths. And I'm going to hopefully plug you into a little mini meditation through the speaker, and we'll all do that together and we'll just get an idea for what it feels like. Because I don't know about those of you who've already done breath work, but when I first did it, it felt really weird. And I spent the entire time wondering if I was sitting in the right position or not. So we're just going to demystify some of what it is and what it isn't. We'll do it together. Then we're going to move on into sleep. I'm going to cover the biology of sleep, but again, quite, a broad brushstroke of why we need sleep and how it works. And then the things that might impact your sleep. Lots of them you'll already know, and it's going to feel like I'm teaching you things that you already knew. The hard thing is making changes that benefit us. Some of it's within our power. Not all of it is, though, sadly. And there's no one magic wand. I really wish that there was for any of you who are really struggling with sleep. It's going to be a combination of things. But sometimes just getting a few little tips and learning a little bit about things that we could do differently can be helpful. And some of us who do really struggle with our sleep, sometimes we're already doing all of those things and it can feel really disheartening. So I don't want anyone to go away from here feeling like, oh, I already do that and I still can't sleep. There are other things that potentially you can talk through with a health practitioner if you're doing everything else. But that's what we're going to do today. Anyone got any questions at the outset? Just anything that they're wondering whether I'm going to cover, or if they're not sure about any aspects of the session? It's a really informal session. So if you stick your hands up, just because I'm hard of hearing, if you stick your hands up if you want to just ask a question at any point, I'll stop and we'll take a question. If it's something I'm going to cover later, I might just say, oh, I'm going to get to that. But don't feel worried about asking me to either be louder, slower, or explain the complicated sciencey words that I think are really obvious and you're like, you've lost me. So if I do any of that, just yell at me. Did you have a question when I asked about questions? No, you were just having a stretch. That's good. All right, fab. Well, let's get into it. So I'm just going to start off with a bit of a brief. Can all of you see the screen behind me? Because I'm aware I'm stood in front of it. We're going to start with a little brief overview of probably GCSE biology. Our nervous system is controlled by our brain, our nerves, and our hormones and chemicals within our body. And our nervous system is actually what controls how we cope with stress. So I'm going to go through the two halves of the nervous system, broadly speaking, the side that responds to stress and the side that calms us down. But before I get into that, I just wondered if anyone knows what stress even is. I've been talking about stress as if you all know what that is. Can anyone tell me what stress means to them? Because it means different things. Yeah. Yes. Fear of something negative happening. So it's almost like the anticipation of something negative. And that's what stress means to you. Yeah, it doesn't sound very positive, does it? Yeah, over at the back. Okay, yeah. So stress could be good or bad. Can you give me an example of a good stress? Can you give me an example? Okay. So there was a lot of anticipation and uncertainty for something that you were looking forward to. And that in itself was quite stressful because ultimately the thing it was anticipation, wasn't it? Something good was going to happen. So yeah, exactly. Stress. Yeah, yeah. It was still stressful, even though it was a good thing. Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't necessarily always have to be negative, but it often is, isn't it? Has anyone else got a different definition of stress or yeah? Yeah. Yeah. So deadlines and feeling overwhelmed by what we've got to do. So that sometimes that's of our own making. Sometimes we make our own to-do list and we set the deadlines for it. And then we wonder why we can't go. And other times they're external, aren't they? So it's other people's expectations or requirements that we're expected to meet. And we don't feel like we've got the time for it. So there's lots of different definitions of stress, but one of the key ones is that it's related to mental and emotional strain or tension. So we could talk about physical stress. So when we work out, we're physically stressing our muscles. But I think for most of you today, what you're expecting to hear about is more the mental and emotional stress. So that's what I'm going to focus on. So it's a mental or emotional strain or tension that is caused by something adverse, which means negative often. But I liked your point at the back about how that could still come about even if it's a good thing that's promoting it, because it's the pressure of getting to that step. But I also want to break down the perhaps preconception that just because it's a mental or an emotional state doesn't mean it has physical implications. So there are physical sensations in our body that we get when we are under stress. And we probably all instinctively know what those are or what they feel like. And they might be different from person to person, but they'll be broadly similar. So could I ask you just to shout out a feeling in the body, a sensation that you associate with stress? Tension, like a physical tightness? Yeah? Anyone else? Heart beating faster, so palpitations. Yes. Not all of us will get all of these, but most of us will recognize them. Anyone else? A funny sensation here in the gut. Yeah. So like a belly feeling that feels uncomfortable. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Almost like paralysis of not being able to get across what you want to do or to move. So that can come about as a result of tightness. Yeah, we'll come. Yeah, well, absolutely, we'll come to that. But just for the moment, just we're thinking about how it feels in the body when we're acutely stressed. So we've talked about tension. We've talked about palpitations of the heart beating fast. We talked about a gut feeling. What about for you? Yeah, like an inability to think, right? To form a thought or a sentence or to plan. Yeah, like suddenly the brain becomes jelly. Okay, like a pain or a tightness here. Yeah. So there's lots of sensations of discomfort, aren't they? None of these have been pleasant feelings, have they? That we've had. But these are all. There's a reason why we get these physical sensations in our body, and it's to do with the nervous system setting us up for something. Okay. So we've got these two halves of the nervous system. We call the one side sympathetic and the other side parasympathetic. But let's forget that for the minute. What we're really talking about is a fight or flight side, and the other side is our rest and digest side. They're two halves, they're the yin and the yang, right? So in our fight or flight side, that's the side that's preparing our body for something bad. We might need to fight off a predator, we might need to flee, we need to do something to protect ourselves. So the heart beats faster, so we've got more blood supply to our muscles. Our muscles tighten because they're ready for some form of physical action. The gut changes because we don't need to digest things right now, right? We need to run away or fight. So the blood is diverted from the gut. So we get a strange sensation here. And we might also feel other sensations with breathing faster or trembling or sometimes sweating. And these are all preparation for what we might need to do physically, but it's controlled by our nerves. All right. And on the other side of the coin, we've got the opposite. We've got the rest and digest. This is a time when we're not anxious or stressed. We're calm, we're safe, we're secure. The body now has time to digest. We produce more saliva, our gut starts to work. We release all these enzymes, our muscles relax, and we get ready for sleep. We can't do this if fight and flight is on the go. All right, so the one has to make way for the other, and they are in balance. This side is not a bad thing, right? You were talking about actually there can be some good sides to stress, and it's really important that the body has this function because actually acute stress, short-term stress, makes us hyper-focused on a problem. It makes us rise to an occasion. It gives us confidence and strength to do something that would otherwise be really challenging. And it puts all the blood in the right place for that challenge, right? So it's important. If any of you have ever done like what I'm doing right here, stood up talking to a room of people, right? That's scary, okay? So my blood's pumping faster, right? I'm focused on what I'm saying. And it's important that happens. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to meet those challenges. But the problem is it needs to be balanced with some downtime. It can't be like that all of the time. So there are two main hormones that kind of drive this process. We talked about the nervous system, which are the nerves firing, but there are also some hormones which are like chemical messengers in the body, which tell the body what to do, right? And we've got kind of like a daytime one and a nighttime one, the basic way of looking at it. Our cortisol is a daytime one, that's our blue line here, and our daytime one responds to stress, okay? It's our stress hormone. It gets us up in the morning, gets us out of bed and gets us going, gets us doing stuff, right? And in the nighttime, a different hormone called melatonin takes over. And that's the one that helps us relax and sleep. And the two work in opposition to each other. All right, so cortisol is not a bad thing. As I said before, acute stress is really important. You need to be able to rise to a challenging circumstance. The problem is when it becomes really prolonged. So if you can see, say, for example, I hope this is working on, is it working? I'm just doing my little, try this. Here we go. So if we had an acute stress, this is a say, for example, we fall over and hurt ourselves, or a phone call comes through and it was from the garage and they say your car's failed its MOT, all right, or a phone call from your mother-in-law, just anything comes in and we get a spike of that cortisol. It was already on its way down because we're halfway through the day, but then something happens and our body releases more to deal with that stress. And it does it quickly and then it comes back down again. All right, that's normal. That's what should happen. The problem is when we have repeated stress throughout the day. There's not just one little thing, there's another and then another and then another. The alarm goes off at 6 a.m. to wake us up. We flip our phone over and look at our emails and we've got 3 from the boss and we know we've got a deadline approaching. We go downstairs and we've run out of milk. We're late for the bus. There's traffic on the road. We get into the office and so-and-so's booked a meeting with us that we didn't know we had. These are all stresses. So you can see that every single time the cortisol tries to come down, there's another thing that spikes it up. So this prolonged raised cortisol throughout the day is the problem. It's not really meant to be like that. And that can cause poor health outcomes. And that's what I want to talk about a little bit today. It's not just that you don't feel great in your body, but it's actually the body responds by it impacts how we are in our health and our risk of illness. So it has some significant impact. So chronic stress can lead to all of these things, and I'll let you guys have a little look at them. But essentially, when it persists and it doesn't settle down, we get disruption in our sleep because the cortisol's still high in the evening. It's meant to be low, but it's still high. It's not come down. So the melatonin doesn't know to kick in yet. And we struggle to relax and unwind and fall asleep. And actually, that's probably one of the primary causes for difficulty sleeping, is our cortisol level is still too high from all of the day's stresses. But it also impacts our immune function. So when we are under acute stress, it actually down-regulates our immune system. It says, we don't need this right now, we're busy with other things. If it does that over a long period of time, we can get disorders with our immune function and our well-being. We can feel very chronically tired. Anyone been really, really stressed and just said that I just feel tired all the time. Like it's fatigue caused by chronic inflammation. It can also affect our ability to concentrate and process information and learn. So our productivity goes down, our mood goes down, because we're not able to concentrate and process what's happening to us. We're too busy firefighting. So that's really important. And depression is an inflammatory illness. Depression is caused by inflammation, and it can come about purely because of chronic stress, which is a chronic level of inflammation that the body's having to respond to. Other inflammatory conditions, heart disease. Heart disease is an inflammatory condition, right? It's not because of your genes. It's not just because of those genes that you had, but it's actually due to inflammation in the body, and chronic stress is inflammatory. It can affect our hormones, right? So cortisol's the stress hormone. The body needs to make it. It doesn't just have it all the time. It needs to make it. And it makes it with the same building blocks that it makes other hormones. So if it's busy making cortisol, it's not busy making your estrogen or your testosterone. So we can find difficulties with our periods or fertility or our libido. And that's caused by the fact that we don't have enough of those hormones because we're too busy making cortisol because the bus was late. And then also weight gain. So cortisol affects our sugar metabolism. All right, so our stress response has an effect on our blood sugar. And when we're chronically stressed, we start to not cope with our own blood sugar very well. And we start to gain weight, we start to feel hungry more often, okay? And we start to sleep worse, which has an impact on our blood sugar control as well. So things like obesity and blood pressure and diabetes, all related to chronic stress. So it has implications in lots of things to do with our physical health, not just that butterflies in the stomach and the heart beating faster and those sorts of things. Changes how our gut functions. Who notices that their bowels change when they're stressed, right? So there are lots of receptors in the gut that respond to it, as well as in the brain. So yeah, one of the biggest problems is that we're busy, aren't we? We're busy all the time, busy, always got things to do. And you were talking about your to-do list and not having enough time. Okay, so this sensation that we just don't have enough time is one of the key drivers of chronic stress. The pace of life now compared to how it was 30 years ago. We live a very fast life, but our bodies physiologically are the same as they were in the 80s and the 90s. They haven't changed, but our world has, and how we live has. There's only so much we can cope with. The work-life balance. What balance? Work comes home with you now, doesn't it? There might be some of you in the room, or a lot of you in the room, that have left work a long time ago. But nowadays, work comes home on this little device we carry around with us. Mine's gone. All the time, pinging, just reminding us. There's some emails. Oh, I just need to do that thing. Right, we don't ever put work down. How many of you have done your work for your day job in your hours that you're at home? Few in the room. Those of you who are long retired, how many of you used to do that? Bring home work. Yeah, right. So pretty much everyone's hand has now gone up. How many of you do it or have done it regularly? Not just an occasional, oh, I need to do that because someone's on annual leave. Regularly, exactly. So where's the balance between work and life? Where's it going? How's it changed? Screens and devices as well, being things that constantly interrupt us with sometimes great things, you know, cat memes and TikTok is fantastic, right? But it interrupts us from what we were doing before we saw the cat meme and got lost for half an hour into a world of YouTube, right? It distracts us from what we were doing before. Now we've got less time to do that thing, and now I feel stressed. Okay, so there's constant interruptions all of the time that impact your downtime. So lots of us will use things like this for downtime. I'm just going to go and have half an hour on my own on the loo. I'm going to scroll a constant feed of information and entertainment. And, you know, that's not really downtime where we can sit and process what's happened to us that day. How do I feel about it? Or just take some breaths because I'm overwhelmed. It's actually just more stimulation, right? It's just continued. But it doesn't always need to be like that. And in the parts of the world where people say that they have fairly stress-free life and live long, happy, healthy lifestyles, these people have a completely different pace of life. They are not rushing from one job to the next job to the next. They are not battling with traffic at rush hour. They are not getting home and checking their emails. They are not sitting on screens until 10 p.m. Okay? They spend their time doing hard graft and hard work, but they often do it as a community together with others. They then will go home and spend time with friends and family that doesn't involve their day job. They will go out in the garden. They will spend time sitting and meditating, or they will pray, or they will engage in some form of social hour where they come together and have meals and talk and laugh. And they will do all of these things every single day. They will have naps in the middle of the day. Who has a nap in the middle of the day now? Hardly anyone, sometimes if I'm really tired. But yeah, they will do that just as a matter of routine. That's part of their lifestyle. They sit quietly without a phone to distract them during the time when they're bored. They sit and think about their lives and what it means to them. They reflect. They have long conversations. We can't even wait in the queue in Costa without getting our phone out. Or, you know, walking down the street, there's a million things to distract us from. So when we look at the approach of other societies and cultures who claim to have very, very low levels of stress, we can see how their lifestyles are so different from ours. And I'm not suggesting we can all go back to working in the fields and coming home with our loved ones and having big community meals, because we just live a very different life. But can we take some elements of that and bring them into our lives? Do we need to get swept up in the hustle and the bustle and then wonder why we can't cope and we can't sleep and we're nervous and anxious all the time and we don't feel like we're in control anymore? Or can we take a step back and say, yeah, maybe I don't need to say yes to absolutely everything, and maybe I can take 5 minutes for myself? But it's about stepping outside of what's become normal. So I want us now to think, each of you yourselves now, about stress. And not just about how we can de-stress, but first and foremost, I want you, hopefully you've all got a bit of paper. It doesn't need to be much. It just needs to be a scrap where you can write down. I want you to think about your stress levels, your personal stress levels on average, not right now in this moment, but think about it over the last maybe 2 or 3 weeks, right? On a day-to-day level, if you're going to score it out of 10, 10 being I physically cannot cope, I can barely get out of bed and function, just coming here was an ask, and I feel overwhelmed by even the chime of the clock. 1 is I'm so laid back, I'm in reverse, nothing phases me, I am chill personified, all right? So if you can imagine a spectrum of 1 to 10, where would you put yourself? What number would you give yourself, if you're honest, about your stress levels? And it might be low, you might be dead chill, that's fine, or it might be 10. Just write down a number, commit to it for me if you can on your piece of paper. 10 is I'm so overwhelmed I can't cope with life. 1 is nothing phases me at all. And it doesn't have to be as a person, it's about now, in this current time, right? Because we've all been different numbers at different times in our lives. So it's just looking at you now, in the last few weeks. How would you rate your stress? Does anyone want to share their number? It's okay if you don't. Go on then.
I put a 2 to 3.
2 to 3? So put that into words for me. What does that mean for you?
There are times I'm a little bit more stressed, but generally I'm not.
Generally, pretty easygoing.
I'm retired here.
Yeah, fabulous. That's great. Okay. Yeah. There'll always be the odd thing, of course. Yeah, lovely. All right. We'll be taking a leaf out of your book later and we'll all be retiring.
I can make money out of my
Who else has got another number that they want to share or reflect on what they've said? Yeah? Yeah? 6/7, yeah, that's fine. Yeah. You're like, so you're at the point where small things can overwhelm you. Yeah. You have a reaction to that. Okay, yeah, yeah. So you can recognize that as a sign of, yeah. Okay, but it's there and you can recognize it, and that's where you're at. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Anyone else got anything higher that they're happy to share? Are you happy to share? You go for it. You put an 8, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, yeah, it gets like that sometimes, doesn't it? And as I said before, some of these will be things of our own making, and some of them are outside of our realm or our sphere of influence. And then it's about, well, I can't necessarily get rid of that thing, but I can recognize that this is something that have had in my life right now that is taking up a lot of my energy. And can I make space elsewhere to get that balance back again? I can't get rid of the thing, but can I balance it with something? So I would say probably 2 or 3 years ago, mine was probably like a 2. And at the minute, mine is more like a 7 or an 8. So times change, don't they? And it's personal circumstances and other things that go on. And it's about being able to recognize and reflect on those, and then think about how we can impact them. So if your numbers lower down, you might feel like, actually, do you know what? I'm pretty happy with how things are, and I don't particularly need to make many changes at this point in time. And that's absolutely fine. If your numbers higher up, more than 5, you might be starting to think, well, if I could help that would be better. So I want to go through a little exercise now where I want you to write down, let's aim for 5, but if you get more, that's great. 5 things that either bring you joy, and I mean real joy, make you smile, laugh, happy, or they soothe your soul. They really nourish you as a person, that afterwards you come away thinking, God, I feel better. Can you name 5? Let's go for 5 things that fall into one of those 2 categories. I think it might have been pre-kids, to be fair, Morgan. Excellent. So it's some of these will come to you really, really easily, and some of them will take a little bit more thinking. And it might involve thinking back to a time when you were younger as well. Sometimes the things that bring us the most joy or really get back to who we are as a person are things that we used to do when we were children, or we were drawn to as teenagers, and maybe we've lost some of those along the way in our busyness or in our responsibilities, or just because we're old. But think back to those times when you were more carefree, maybe, and think if there are things that really speak to who you are.
Music and dancing,
Yeah.
singing.
Demon Hunters.
And you get like those feelings like that you
Yeah.
have when you was younger and aspiring to be a pop star or whether you just like enjoy the music. Stop doing that at some point. I don't know whether also it marries with alcohol, so at some point
Yeah.
you're partner. But actually without yeah, we need to bring that back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you know it's physiologically impossible to be angry while you're dancing? It's impossible to dance while you're angry. Okay, so I've put a few little things up on this little word cloud bubble, and some of you might recognise some of those as being things you've got on your list, but some of you might not. Does anyone want to share like something that they've got on their list that either makes them joyful or soothes their soul?
Growing.
Say that again.
Growing.
Growing, as in you getting taller.
No vegetables, garden.
That feels more achievable at your age. So growing things in the garden or an allotment or something like that. Yeah, that does all of those things. Yeah. Ah. Yeah. Yes. Being pampered and looked after and massages and all that. Yeah, that's lovely. That does make you feel nice. Anyone from the back got something they want to share? Yeah. They make you laugh. Yes. Looking after the grandchildren. So like younger children or yeah. And what is it about them that makes you laugh? Yeah. Yeah. It's a joy of having little ones around. They're silly and they find simple things. Yeah. Yeah, that leads to a lot of no, what you see is literally what you get with a child, isn't it? Absolutely. Did you have your hand up at the back? Yeah. Being creative in some way, expressing yourself through art. Yeah. And that's something that can be both joyful and soothing depending on you. So hopefully you've all got a few things written down. I want you to look at each of those things that you've got written down and can you estimate how often you do them now? In the last 3 weeks, how often have you done the things on your list that bring you joy or that soothe your soul? Is it daily? Is it occasionally? Is it, oh God, I haven't done that for years? See if you can write down roughly how often you're doing these things. If it's going on holiday to Hawaii, that's going to be more challenging as a regular activity. I listed about 6 when I was on my dog walk this morning and then realised I'd left. And then I was like, oh, I like spending time with friends. I forgot about that one. And then like go a bit further along. And I love reading. It's funny once you start thinking about it. For those of you who've got quite low stress scores, anyone who's got less than a 5 on their how they're feeling right now, there's a few of you. Yeah? Do you want to share roughly how often you're doing things on your list? Yeah, go for it, if you're happy. Oh, bless you. I'll probably kick you out at some point, but that's lovely. Thank you. Being sociable and having people around you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And contribution is another thing that often brings people a lot of joy. What about yourself?
Well, I'm sort of limited in the things that you automatically my normal go-to.
Yeah, sure.
5 years, etc. So there's almost like something where there's an element of reciprocity. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I've always loved being in the natural world, but anything where I feel as if I can, it collapses the distance between myself and the exterior world. Do you know what I mean? Like I go to the allotment, and really, which is lovely, and I meet nice people there. One thing I remember is there was just this beautiful pear tree and we picked pears, and I absolutely loved the bark of the pear, and just being able to touch it, which is, I mean, it's so fundamental to what we are as human beings, and so that would be one thing. I like classical music and I listen to Radio 3 and I think there's just got Radio 3 on Wind.
Yeah.
Have you listened to that?
I've heard it once, but I haven't listened to it regularly. It's really lovely. Yeah, they're quite similar.
Yeah, well, no, I've just bought myself some.
Okay.
I lie in bed listening. That's really.
That's very soothing, yeah.
Yeah, and I always like dancing. Obviously, that's limited, but weirdly enough, I do some ballet exercises from the past while I'm in bed. So
amazing.
So it doesn't actually put my heart rate up.
Yeah.
I think there was some evidence from Nancy Clymas that she did on people with an exercise because you have this problem with your heart rate going up. She said what I actually found out myself, which is like if you do 5 minutes, rest for 10 afterwards.
Yes.
And it allows the body to reset.
Yeah.
And you're never going to do this.
Yeah. But it's something that you can touch on, whether it's okay, it's not going for a hike up Snowdon, but you can be in the allotment and touch the pear. Or it's I can't do ballet anymore, but I can still do the exercises, and that brings me that sense of joy. And it's something that's accessible and that you can do regularly.
And it's something I think everybody does as a child.
Yeah.
I mean, I lost my mother when I was very small, and I used to dance. All I did was dance and draw. I didn't worry about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and they have the common sense to realise those things somehow working.
Yeah. They spoke to you.
Well, they're so basic, aren't they?
Yeah.
Everybody in the world, whether or not dance,
move in some way. Yes.
And then anything creative. I mean, I used to do a lot, but I don't do so much now, so that's hard. But I got myself a nice new camera. An original growing out of the wall. It sounds crazy, but I realised it was about me and my tenacity to hold on.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Yeah. So you could express yourself in a different way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely.
So, I mean, I'm not saying it's completely ideal.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. That's really, really lovely. No, that's fine. That's great. And I'm sure we can all relate to aspects of that, even if they're not the same sorts of things. That those of us perhaps with lower stress scores, are you finding that the sort of things on your list are the sorts of things you do reasonably often?
Yeah, one of the things I got into quite a few years ago when I had my first bout of low mood, they used to call it, was just sitting watching the birds in the garden.
Yeah.
At the minute I've got tons of
finches
and green finches
all over the teasels.
And then the other one, more this time of the year, I love the autumn.
Yeah.
I love watching the colours and the leaves.
Yeah. And just simple things like that you can access quite easily to bring you that joy.
Coast, but I probably only get there a couple of times a year.
Okay. Yeah. No.
Just be with friends and having a good day now.
Yeah, laughing is a really key one.
Sort of quite simple stuff, really.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be complex, and often the more complicated it is, the harder it is to build into your day-to-day lives. Thank you so much for sharing, both of you. Is anyone who's got a higher stress score, someone with maybe a 7 or an 8, comment on how often they found themselves doing the things that bring them joy or soothe their soul? Hardly ever. Yeah. Yes. It's making the time, isn't it? And prioritizing it. If you remember back when we saw that very first slide with the balance of the fight, flight, and the rest and digest, and if we're constantly in fight and flight, the rest and digest never gets a chance, never gets a look in, and we have to make time for it. It's not going to make it for ourselves. Understanding how much of a priority it should be is key, because they're always the first things to go when you're busy, isn't it? When you're busy, when you've got lots of deadlines, the first thing you drop is always the downtime, the me time, the creative, the walking in nature. I haven't got time for that today, right? They're the first things to go, but then we pack more and more stressful things in. We now no longer have the bit that actually helped us to balance it out. So if we keep on doing that, we're going to stay chronically stressed and overwhelmed because we're never bringing it down. Even if it's just 5 minutes, a couple of times a day, 5 minutes to breathe, 5 minutes to read, 5 minutes to do our exercises or look at the autumn colours. Just those small windows allow a little bit of bringing the stress levels down. And that is really, really vital So it's prioritizing that and finding the time to do it. But thank you for taking that exercise. And you can take that back home with you and think about it when you've got a bit longer as well. And really think about the things that you've written on your list that you're really not doing very often, but you think you probably could make some time for, even just in a little way, starting with the easiest ones and building up from there. So, yeah, go for it. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. 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 Of course. Yeah. Yes, exactly. You sort of need to timetable it in. No, you just need to sit and press the keys and remember what it felt like. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. But doesn't mean you can't stick a song on and sing along to it. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, well, that's fantastic. So I thought we might just take 5 minutes to do a bit of a breathing exercise if you're all up for it. Hopefully my speaker's going to work. So for those of you who've never done a breath work or a breathing exercise before, the key is not to get in your head about it, like I did when I couldn't work out if I was sitting in the right position or not, and whether I should be upright or unsupported or leaning back or right. Just sit in whatever manner that you feel vaguely comfortable, okay? And the idea is really just to spend a couple of minutes feeling your breath, being aware of your breath, because we breathe 60 times a minute. Like we breathe without thinking, and that's fantastic. Our brains are very, very busy doing other things. When we can bring ourselves back to the sensation of us breathing, we're not busy thinking about the past, the future, what's going to happen if such and such. You know, we're just in the now. We're just here in this space with how we are in this moment. And it really helps to bring the concentration back to yourselves and to stop the snowballing about what was or what might be. We also don't need to breathe in any special way, right? Yawning's a great example. We don't need to breathe in any special way. We're just breathing the way we normally breathe. But if you're anyone like me, as soon as you start to focus on your breathing, you start to breathe in a very deliberate way, right? That's fine, right? If that's what you do, that's fine. The aim is to eventually, if you do it regularly, you can get to a point where you don't concentrate so hard that you're like in for 3, out for 4, in for 3, right? But if that's how it works out for you, fine. Just feel what it feels like when your breath goes in through your nostrils and feel what it feels like when it comes out. What happens to your belly, what happens to your chest, the sort of sensation of the air inside your nose. Just be aware of it. And if it changes, if it suddenly becomes quite fast, then just go, oh, it's got faster. Don't try and be like, oh God, I've gone faster. I need to like slow it down, right? There's no aim here. There's no like should be or best kind of breathing. There's just breathing. And all you're doing is just sitting with it and noticing. There's lots of different ways that you can do it. Some people like to count, literally just count them in 1, out 2, in 3, out 4. And they get to 10 and then they start again. Okay, so that's a good way of keeping your mind on your breathing. And if it wanders off and thinks about what you've got to do later and you go, oh, I'm thinking about that thing I've got to do later, you just come back and start from 1 again. There's no, shouldn't have or there's other ways of doing it. And some of you who are familiar with breath work might prefer other methods, like going up and down your fingers, in, up your thumb, out, down your thumb, in, up your forefinger, out, down your forefinger, and tracing it with your hand as a way of keeping time or keeping count. Other people follow the sides of a box, up, along, out, along, up. Lots of different ways to do it. What I was hoping we would do today is just to take a guided exercise where we use somebody to guide us through sitting and breathing, and just take 5 minutes for ourselves in silence. If any of you don't feel comfortable to do that, then please just sit with your own thoughts or doodle or whatever. That's absolutely fine. Don't feel like you have to do it. And if any of you feel completely and utterly restless and need to step out, then please do that too. So we'll see if this connects, and we'll do a 5-minute breath exercise. I found one for stress, so I thought it was appropriate. So I'll play it and see if it works.
Steve here. Welcome to this short mindful
Can everyone hear that?
exercise for those moments where you feel overwhelmed by stress. So let's begin by taking a big deep breath in through the nose and then out through the mouth. To help settle us into this exercise. There is a lot about life that can cause us to feel stressed, and very often that list is long. And if you're feeling particularly stressed right now, I'm sorry. For the next few minutes, let's try to set that list aside. So in this exercise, we're going to do a very simple breathing exercise together. Deep breathing helps to send a signal to the brain that we are okay. It activates the calming centers of the body, which helps to create some space. A space in which we can choose to respond to our stress in a more skillful way. Often taking a moment before we react to stressful situations can make all the difference. So getting comfortable wherever you are sitting, taking a moment to feel the contact of your body on the chair or the surface beneath you. That sense of your body being held and supported, the feet on the floor. And you can close your eyes if that feels right for you, just adopting a soft downward gaze. So first, bringing the attention to the breath. Noticing where you feel it. Perhaps in the nose, the throat, the chest, or the diaphragm. And we're going to be taking some deep breaths in through the nose for 4, holding it for 4, and then breathing out the mouth for 6. And with the out breath, you can even let out a sigh, or so that it's loud enough that you can hear the breath. So let's begin. Taking a big deep breath in for 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold it for 4, 2, 3, 4. Now breathing out the mouth for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's great. So deep breath in for 4, 2, 3, 4. And holding it for 4, 2, 3, 4. And breathing out for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One more time, deep breath in for 4, 2, 3, 4. Holding for 4, 2, 3, 4. And then out for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One final deep breath in for 4, 2, 3, 4. Holding for 4, 2, 3, 4. And out for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is great. Thank you for doing that with me. So gently allowing your breathing to return to its natural rate and rhythm. You did really great. So connecting in with the different points of contact in the body, the feet on the floor, the back pressing against the chair, hands in the lap. Opening the eyes if you had them closed. And taking in the whole space that you're in. Making note of all the different physical objects. Perhaps taking in what is outside as well. You can see out of the window. So this is an exercise you can come back to anytime you're feeling overwhelmed. We can breathe into the stress together. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you back here really soon.
Right, I feel quite sleepy now. Does anyone want to share kind of how they feel now after having done the breathing exercise? Good, bad, indifferent, lovely. Did anyone find sitting and breathing made them feel more stressed? Fine if it did. Yeah, yeah. Can't do that many. Yeah, yeah. That's fine, and everyone's different. So what I did want to come back to is if you wanted to take that kind of a breathing exercise and do it at your own pace and your own rhythm, you can still get all of the benefit for that. So don't feel too stressed about not being able to keep to the numbers that she had on that. Everybody is different. Some people can hold it for much longer, and some people just in for 2, hold for 1 or 2, and out for 3 or 4. As long as the out breath is longer than the in breath, yeah, that's absolutely fine. Anyone else feel a little uneasy doing it? Sometimes people just feel really self-conscious, even when you're on your own. I felt that a couple of times. I sat there thinking, I better look like a right idiot. Yeah. 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 It's funny what it kind of like brings up, isn't it? And each and every time you sit and do a breathing exercise like that, and it doesn't have to be that one, it could be anything, just sitting quietly for 5 minutes, it'll feel different to the last one you did. So I think that's important to know, is that sometimes we sit down to breathe and we just don't seem to be able to relax. And that's absolutely fine. The object of the breathing exercise is not to get to a goal of deep fulfillment and relaxation, some kind of nirvana. The object is just to sit quietly and understand what state your body's in. It's a chance for you to check in and say, actually, how am I at the minute? And sometimes it's, oh, I was feeling a bit het up and now I feel better. Other times it's, I'm all over the place. My breathing's all over the place, my brain's all over the place. But that's still, that 5 minutes is still worthwhile. It still gave you that opportunity to say, oh, okay, yeah, I'm struggling at the minute, because that check-in point tells you, right, maybe I do need to say no to that thing that I was going to do later, or maybe I need to ask somebody else to take on that job that I was about to do, or maybe I don't need to do painting the hall, stairs and landing right now before 6 p.m. So it just allows you that check-in.
I run, it's exactly this session. But there are other sessions that do exactly this. So Insight Time is an app, and it's got different breathing exercises to help with anxiety. And the idea is, I was always promising myself that I was going to do these things, never really did them. So doing it with people and running it myself, make sure that one I have to do it. And then 2, it's building it, the habit together. I think that really helps, knowing that you're going to go somewhere and do this and have that experience and recognise how it makes you feel, then hopefully will help us all to build these things.
That's fine, that's great, yeah. So hopefully, yeah. Yeah. Which is very worthwhile. I'm aware that we're running slightly over where I'd planned to be by now, because you guys have been so good at sharing and we've done the exercise, and hopefully that's been really beneficial for each of you. I want to get on to sleep. So I imagine a lot of you are here because you want to hear about sleep. So I'm going to skip through some of the science and we'll just get to troubleshooting and talking about the things that help, if that's okay. I don't need to say that sleep is one of the most underrated things that we can do for our health. We lie down for 8-ish hours completely unconscious and vulnerable for a reason. as a species. It involves allowing that balance, that rest and digest to take over, and for all of our repair processes to happen in that time. So it is an important physiological thing that we all need. It's a source of a lot of stress, weirdly, for a lot of people, because maybe they're either struggling with their sleep or they're worried that they're not getting enough sleep. We sometimes fixate on the amount of sleep that we need, and it can be different from what we think. But we are generally, as a group, getting much less sleep than we should do. We are getting about 1 to 2 hours less sleep a night than we did 60 years ago, which is about 25% reduction in the amount of sleep that we were getting. And poor sleep affects, you're all aware, if you've had a bad night's sleep, it affects how you function the next day, not only your cognitive brain function and how well you can think, but it also impacts your digestion, your immune system, how your body heals from physical traumas. And you can get increased rates of mental illness and other things with chronic sleep insufficiency. I don't want to scare any of you that aren't sleeping well, though, okay? So sometimes that becomes a bit of a worry, doesn't it? For those of us who struggle with our sleep, we start panicking that we're going to do ourselves some sort of real harm, and then it becomes a real vicious cycle. So I want to try and break that pattern. It's tightly regulated by hormones, which we discussed earlier. Essentially, it's really important to be, this diagram you don't have to memorize, right? But it's really regulated by the amount of light we perceive during the day. It is really important to get good amounts of light through our eyes in the daytime, as early in the daytime as possible, to allow our sleep hormones to function properly. All right, if we're all working indoors on screens, away from the outdoors, we might go out at lunchtime if we're lucky to go and get a Costa, and then we come back and sit at our desks again, and we spend so much time inside, we're getting so much less light than we should. Even this lighting here, which for me feels exceptionally bright, does not give you as much light as being outside on a cloudy day. That might not be obvious. We think that we're in well-lit environments, and we are, but even being outside on a cloudy day will give you about 20 times the amount of light that you will get in a well-lit room. Okay, the sky is vast, and our eyes perceive all of that. On a blue sky day, fantastic, we've got loads, but even in this country on a grey day, we get plenty of light. And then the opposite happens in the evening. In the evening time, where really we want our levels of light to come way down, we're sitting in brightly lit home environments with screens on, LED TVs or a device in our hands, right? And we're stimulating our eyes all the time. The light stimulates us to be awake. So we need that early in the day, and then as the evening comes, we need the levels of light to dim right down. So back in the days of yore, our only light after the sun went down was firelight, and fires and candles emit a really low red wavelength of light, which does not stimulate us to keep awake. But nowadays we have overhead lighting, lamps, screens, and other electronic devices which emit a completely different wavelength of high frequency blue light, which is what you would see on a daylight day, and it's telling us at 9 p.m. whilst Netflix is on, la, squeaky time, right? Okay, and actually we needed to be in hours of darkness by then. So that's a really key one. We're really sensitive to blue light, and things like screens and phones and tablets have a lot of it, even when you have it on the warm setting. Okay, so even on its warm setting, it's still emitting far more light than a fire would, or a low lamp in a room. So just be aware of that. But in essence, sleep can be impacted by lots and lots of other things. So the food you eat. Anyone think the food they ate impacted their sleep cycle? So carbohydrate heavy, starchy heavy meals, rice, pasta, oats, those sorts of things, wheat, potatoes, stimulate wakefulness. So if we're eating our starch heavy meals late in the evening, 7 o'clock, that carbohydrate intake will stimulate us to remain more wakeful. Carbohydrate heavy meals in the morning, early, with a nice dose of light, so oats or other nice cereal crops, not Kellogg's, So having our carbohydrate heavy meals earlier in the day is better for us than having them late at night. That doesn't mean we need to be like keto and carb free and anything like that. The brain runs on glucose, it needs carbohydrates, don't avoid them. But it's just about, if you're struggling with your sleep, think about when you can shift them. You can shift them earlier in the day, that may well help. So that has an impact. Stress, we just talked about, why does stress impact sleep? Because of the cortisol, right? The cortisol has to be low in the evening for your sleep hormone melatonin to start to rise. And if your cortisol is still high, melatonin won't rise until much, much, much later. So that might be why people are struggling to fall asleep until 2 in the morning, because at 9 o'clock at night, when your melatonin's supposed to be starting to rise, your cortisol's still quite high, you're still reading emails, you're still looking at the news, scrolling, right? Your cortisol's still high enough, so your melatonin hasn't kicked in yet. So your sleep cycle is pushed later, and you're only feeling sleepy in the early hours of the morning, but then you've got to be up at 6. So yeah, so cortisol and stress is probably one of the key reasons why people really struggle with their sleep. Physical activity, it really does improve your melatonin secretion at night. So the more physically active you can be in the daytime, for those who are able, the lower your cortisol and the higher your melatonin peak in the evening. That's not possible for everyone, and some of us have our physical limitations, but it's just something to be aware of. If you're able to be physically active, and it doesn't mean you have to go to the gym or do a heavy workout, it just means move your body where you can and as much as you can. The more you move and the more active you are, the better you will sleep, even if it's not a high stress workout. Temperature is really important. The lower the temperature in your room, the better your sleep. Your room needs to be on the verge of cold so that you feel chilly if you've not got quite a big duvet on, all right? So the idea is that the air in the room is cold, pretty cold, which causes your core body temperature to rise, to drop, sorry. When your core body temperature drops, your melatonin spikes. So cold room. Thick duvet, fine. Cold air in the room. So if you need to leave a window open, make sure all the radiators are turned off in the bedroom. So it's like, make it like a cave, right? Dark and cool. That's what your bedroom should be. And that really helps optimize sleep. Travel is a really obvious one. Jet lag's right disturber of sleep. So if you're someone that's always traveling backwards and forwards in time zones, that can be really, really challenging. But there are ways to mitigate that a little bit if you are a frequent traveler. I'm not going to focus on that today. Medications are a really key one. Medications can act as stimulants, or they can disrupt your hormonal balance. And some people will already know, if they're on some medications, that it seems to affect their sleep. Others can make you sleepy, but then they make you sleepy in the day, and then you're less sleepy at night. So medications can be a key one. If they're medications that you think are disrupting your sleep, you can talk about that with your GP. You can find alternatives or look at other ways of managing the condition. But just something to be aware of. There are conditions that affect your brain, like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, and other conditions that have effects on sleep. We know that. So those of you who might be suffering with some of those conditions, you might find sleep more challenging because they are disrupted. And mental health conditions, obviously, most people who've ever suffered feeling anxious or really low will know that that's affected their sleep. Sleep behaviours, which are the things that we sort of have control over, are one of the main contributors towards poor sleep. So not having a regular bedtime or a bedtime routine, too much light exposure, drinking alcohol or caffeine, those sorts of things can really impact sleep. But I want to just be honest about the limitations of sleep behaviors and improving sleep. Yes, they are important. Yes, they contribute. Yes, they can be one of the key problems that people suffer. But you could do everything correctly and still struggle with your sleep, because there are always other factors. Mental health and chronic stress is probably one of the key ones. And you can have a beautiful nighttime routine with chamomile and no screens after 7 p.m. and an oat milk bath and a low light and a cool room and a sleep machine, and you could still struggle with your sleep, because there might be other mitigating factors. So I want to explain the things that are helpful, but also not to raise them up as some kind of silver bullet that's going to fix everyone's sleep problems, because they don't always, and there may be other things at play here, particularly around stress and mental health. But I've got a few more sort of particular tips, and then maybe we'll get some questions from people. Complete dark is really important. Lots of people don't have completely dark bedrooms, and that's not always easy to achieve. But as dark as you can get does make a really big difference. The other thing that does help is also quiet. And in an era where we are alert to everything, sounds can sometimes just be enough to disrupt someone's sleep levels, especially those of us that have got children still in the house, because you stay on this kind of level of alert, or you might be caring for another relative, or you might have pets or something like that. It's enough to keep you at a superficial level of sleep. So for those of you that are really struggling, consider making your room completely dark, blackout curtains and blinds, that sort of thing, or stick something up in the windows. And or using an earplug at sleep, just the soft foam ones. I don't normally advocate using things that are like throwaway plastic, but you can actually reuse them for quite a long time before you need to get rid of them. So yeah, consider doing something like that if you've never done it before. It can be life-altering in terms of how much better you sleep when using darkness and blocking out the sounds. Things like night lights and displays on clocks seems really silly, but like a digital alarm clock that's got a bright blue or white display, actually just signaling to your brain it needs to be awake. It's not necessarily the case that that's the only thing keeping you awake, but it would certainly not be helping. So getting rid of anything that shines light on you, even an LED thing on your TV on your room, which is on standby, could be enough. So just look at getting all digital lights out of your room if you can, and making sure that you are not using screens within preferably 2 hours of when you want to be falling asleep. Lots of us will just watch the telly until we're tired and then go up to bed. But actually the modern screens, the LCD displays are very, very bright and very stimulating. So perhaps look at having a bit of an earlier shut off for that sort of thing, and then having another activity, reading, drawing, listening to music, crocheting, whatever it might be, as you'll wind down after the telly's gone off. So consider changing your behaviours there if you're struggling. We talked about morning light exposure. It is really, really important. So I mentioned daylight on a cloudy day is 20 times more light exposure than a bright room like this. So even if you work in a brightly lit office, or you have a desk by a window, getting outside and being surrounded by the sky is still much, much better for boosting your melatonin in the evening. So if you can get outside every single day, even if it's just for 20 minutes, half an hour, and the earlier you can expose yourself to light, the better. So the earlier the brain perceives it, the better your routine then afterwards. So eating your breakfast, if you eat your breakfast indoors, go and sit by a window and eat it, something like that, or walk to the bus stop, or take an early morning wander or a stroll if you can, or a coffee break where you get outside. Those can be really important. Winding down in the evening is really key. I think we all sort of intrinsically know about that, don't we, in terms of wind down time and having an evening routine. I think the only key one I would add is just the tech, is using digital screens and tech late into the evening as your source of winding down. Actually could be doing the opposite for two reasons. Firstly, it's the light that it's emitting, which is keeping your brain awake. And secondly, it's what you're absorbing from your tech. Sometimes you're sitting watching Bake Off, okay? If anyone watched the semi-final, I don't know about you, I found that unbelievably stressful. Even though it was just Bake Off, I was so stressed by the end of that program. I had to go and read for 10 minutes just to calm down. So just be mindful of what you're consuming. Watching the 10 o'clock news. How many people do that? I'll just watch the 10 o'clock news and then I'll go to bed. Well, I've just watched doom and famine and war and pestilence and murders, and then I'm going to go and try and sleep, right? So all of the stuff that we consume has an effect, even if we don't realize it. So think a little bit about your use of tech if you're struggling with your sleep. So the stimulation and the light can be a problem. Or just scrolling Instagram doesn't feel stressful, does it? Watching other people's meals and cat videos and whatever else is on Instagram, but actually your brain is still perceiving that feed as constant stimulation. There's a new thing every time you flick, and the brain's going, "Oh, what's this? Oh, what's it?" So that sort of thing is quite stimulating without you realizing it, maybe. But that would be my only thing on that one. And the other thing is, if you if you're someone who sleeps in at the weekend and gets up really early in the week, it's not, the evidence suggests that you should have the same bedtime and the same get-up time all the time. So if you ended up having a late night because you went out partying, you went to a friend's or you had a dinner, it's still better for you to get up at the same time as you would normally than catch up on your sleep then. It's better for you to miss a couple of hours of sleep every now and again for your social events than to shift your bedtime backwards and forwards or your wake-up time backwards and forwards. That's quite disruptive to your body's rhythm without you realising it. And if any of you have ever had a long lie-in the morning and felt awful for like another 4 hours, it's because you have disrupted your circadian rhythm. Your body doesn't know that it's meant to be awake now and it's struggling. So if you can keep to a routine, even on your days off, that's actually better for you. So if you're someone that has to get up at 6 for work, getting up between 6 and 7 at the weekend would still be better than having your lie-in and your late night, sadly. And obviously trying to reduce like emotional stimulation and tension, trying not to have those big discussions with your other half just as you're winding down for bed, which often is the only time you've been able to get with each other, but actually that can be really, really difficult because it makes you super stressed. Caffeine before noon, it's just a no-brainer. Don't care how many people say I can drink as many cups of coffee and it doesn't affect me. It does, you just don't know it does. Caffeine has a really long half-life, which means it is metabolized quite slowly, disappears quite slowly in the body. And 6 hours after you drink caffeine, it's still quite active. There's still half of it left. So if you had your double shot Americano at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, at 8 o'clock at night, you've still got a single espresso in your bloodstream. So just have a little think about your use of caffeine. Some people do metabolize it faster than others. Some people are terrible. It can take 12 hours for them to get rid of it. But if you're going to drink caffeine, which is fab, caffeine's great. It's really good for focus and things like that. Have it early in the day. Make sure you don't have any after midday. And that's just a fairly good rule of thumb if you're struggling with your sleep. Alcohol's another really obvious one. Of course, it makes you drowsy. Everyone knows after they've had a few drinks, they feel a bit drowsy. But once it gets broken down in the liver, the substance that it gets broken down into is a stimulant. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, that wine that you had at bedtime is now acting as a, whoa, ready to go, it's party time. Anyone who's ever had a night where they've had drinking and then they can't sleep after 4, that's because the alcohol has now become a stimulant. It's keeping you awake. So if you struggle with your sleep, alcohol's definitely not the solution, and you might want to use it in more moderation than perhaps you have been. Those are the big tips. Obviously, everyone has their own individual issues with their sleep, and not all of those are appropriate for everybody. Some of you are doing all of that already. Time just for a couple of questions if anyone has key questions on some of the sleep stuff, because I'm aware that we had to go through that quicker than I'd have liked. Yes. If you wake up at 2 o'clock every morning. So I had a really good tip once about what your bed should be used for. Right, 2 things. One of them is sleep. The other one is not very PG, right? Those are the only 2 things your bed should be used for. And if you are awake at 2 o'clock in the morning and you're not intending on falling straight back to sleep, you need to get out of it. So you need to get out of bed and go somewhere else. It could still be in your bedroom, could be in a chair somewhere, it could be downstairs on a sofa, could be in another room that you don't want to disturb your partner. Get out of bed and go somewhere else for a short period of time. Reduce that I need to get back to sleep now or else, because it's a surefire way of never getting back to sleep. So take it as, oh, I'm awake now. Get out of bed, go make yourself a small warming drink of something soothing. Sit with a low light, either listen to some music or read something not very stimulating, or listen to an audiobook you've already heard before until you're bored stiff and feeling a little drowsy and a bit chilly. And take yourself back to bed and treat that as your second bedtime. Yes?
You know that, because I think, we used to sleep in 2 blocks.
Yeah, yeah. We take it in shifts throughout the night. Yeah.
I think they wrote a lot.
Yeah.
And there was a space in, so they had candlelight, right?
Yeah.
And then they'd go to sleep, and then that block at around 2.
Yeah.
I think people often be really creative.
Yeah. Yeah, they get up and chat, tell stories. Yeah, exactly. It's a great time. And then they go back. Yeah. We expect to get 8 blocks in 8 hours in one go, and if we don't, we've failed. It's not natural. Yeah. And some people also don't need as much sleep as we say. As we get older, we naturally need less sleep. So babies will sleep for 17, 18 hours a day. And by the time you're 80, you might only be sleeping for 4 or 5. That is a normal physiological difference, right? But what can happen is as we get older, we get into our 70s, and now we're like, oh, well, I'm up at 4. I'm not getting enough sleep. And then we tell ourselves this story, right? This narrative. I haven't had enough sleep. I'm going to be terrible today. How am I going to get anything done? I'm not going to be able to concentrate. I've got the grandkids, right? And we tell ourselves this negative narrative where actually, if we just got up and said, right, well, that's me done today, and I'll have a little nap later if I really needed one, but hopefully I can go all the way through. Yeah, we just need to tell ourselves a different story about sleep, and don't be frightened of getting up in the night if you wake. Yeah, lovely. Yeah, just go outside into the fresh air, have a few deep breaths. Yeah, it's quite nice. It's lovely and quiet. It's a good time to get thinking done. Yeah, you're welcome.
It's not 2 o'clock, though, often to do with digestion as well.
Yeah, could well be. So depending on what time you had your evening meal, what time things are shifting around, obviously that is our digestion time, isn't it? So some people might find they get quite disturbed at that time and might want to bring their evening meal slightly earlier. So actually some of the best evidence suggests that we probably shouldn't be eating very much in the evenings. It should be our smallest meal of the day. And who does that? It's our biggest meal culturally, isn't it? And we should be eating at around 5 or 6 and nothing afterwards. And how many of us snack late into the evenings when we're sat? Yeah, so there's lots of things we do automatically and culturally that actually are not ideal physiologically. So yeah, moving your dinner slightly forward or having a smaller meal and making a bigger lunchtime could reduce that digestive wake up that you might get. And also, as I mentioned before about the carbohydrate rich meal, if you're eating your pasta, your bread, your rice, your potatoes at 7 o'clock, that's going to be the thing that stimulates you to be more wakeful. Did you have a question, or are you just stretching?
I've seen a few things pop up on Facebook recently, extolling the virtues of this is what women should know, why they're waking up at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and what no one's ever told you.
Yeah. They always have those taglines, don't they?
I haven't bothered opening up any of these
adverts.
So is there anything in the...
I mean, maybe it's going to tell you everything that I just said here. And if it is, then great. Nothing dramatic. There's always something, isn't there? Sleep is something we as a society don't get as much of as we should, but are also highly anxious about, right? And so it's one of those things that's a bit of a tagline. It's a bit of something they know that people are going to click on, because so many of us struggle with our sleep. So it's a bit of a du jour topic, I think. Somewhat of a clickbait, and there'll be all sorts of things you see recommended. Always. The things I mentioned in terms of the light, caffeine, the screens, keeping your room cold, those are the things that have the most body of evidence around them. If you're doing all of those and you're still struggling, speak to a healthcare professional. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Fantastic. And that's the end of our chat. I'm probably going to get a parking ticket, actually. I think my parking's run out. Well, thank you so much for your engagement. We'll finish up there. All right. Thank you very much. Cheers.